we're gonna work for a little bit on a proper draw stroke. Some of you guys have this nailed. This is like, for you guys that do sports or you do martial arts, this is just drilling shit that you know, making it perfect. You can always refine it and make it better. And we're gonna see if anybody's got some dangerous activities. Look away, look back, run the slide forward. Visually and verbally verify that the trigger guard's clear.
All right, so let's do it dry first. And I know this sounds like, hey, I'm at the range, I got ammo. Let's get the bang bang, but this is necessary. This is necessary, right? I do more dry fire now than I ever done in my life. And the only reason I didn't do it more so before is because the government was paying for my bullets, right? So I had 3 bullets, and then I wasted a lot of those. So I apologize for how I and abused your tax dollars. I just didn't know any better. I was dumb, right? So we just shoot a whole lot and then somehow figure out something after you shoot a whole lot of bullets. Well, we don't have that luxury usually as civilians, or even some of us as professionals, right? I got to get the most bang for the buck. No pun intended, right? So we got to go dry. I can do everything that's necessary to implement my tool, or my pistol in this case, right, without having to shoot. Besides manage recoil, and I'm sure y'all have heard that before, maybe on the interwebs or whatever, right? You don't need to do everything to learn the majority of the process. So I'm going to show you what I do and what I talk through in my head as I go through this process. Many of you I see are concealed or inside the waistband like I am right now, right? Which adds a little small level of extra difficulty. You know, there's a reason why professionals and guys that carry guns all the time have the gun outside of the waistband with some space between their waist and the holster, because they're trying to prevent anything from impeding them getting to that tool and implementing it, right? And then the rest of us, everyday citizens, we, for whatever reason, right, we want to keep these things covered up. I don't want to draw attention to myself. I don't want to be an easy target. I don't want to be somebody that you identify that has a gun that you want to take, right? I don't want to be the first guy killed in case there was some kind of crazy worst case scenario. So I don't want to advertise that I have a gun necessary, so we cover them up, right? And in some states you can do open carry as well. It just depends on what you got going on. No big deal. But there's different processes for each individual carry that you might have, right? Obviously the guys outside the waistband on the side with some space, it's going to be a little easier. No clothes in the way, right? When they go to holster, they don't have to worry about clothes or garments getting in the way for the most part, unless it's winter and they got something big, and then they can look down, use their other hand to help remove that obstacle or whatever's in the way, and put their gun in the holster safely without touching the trigger or making the gun do what the machines do, like Nick was talking about. It'll do what it's supposed to do, right? Has no thoughts or values. So for us that have garments, we got to be particularly careful with how we do these things, right? Especially putting the gun away. And drawing the gun, the same thing. So the process I have for guys drawing, you do everything in reverse just to put the gun away in the holster, right? It's the same process every single time. And even if you don't need to, you're like, well, it doesn't require me to do something with my support hand or my other hand when I'm holstering. Well, make it do it anyway, because you're building a system. That way you're programming yourself the right way, and that takes over when you don't have the bandwidth to think about this shit. That's the whole reason we train in general, right? So we can program ourselves to respond or act the way we want ourselves to act, right? So for me, drawing from concealed, right, I got to remove the garment that's in the way, right? But both hands can move at the same time. Now wherever you start, we can start up here, here, or wherever. If I have the ability, I can cheat and freaking have my stuff ready. It doesn't really matter. We don't need to worry about that, right? We'll address some of that and do different starting positions as we go through the next 4 days, right? But I got to get a hold of that garment. I got to move it out of the way. A good way to do that is making sure that you have a system that allows the garment to be moved fully out of the way, not somewhere that just clears, right? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it clears every single time. A good default system. So like me, like I might have a certain garment on, I pull it up to my chest or my sternum area, right? That's my touch point to remind me that's the spot I go to every single time. Don't matter if I needed it or didn't need it, but I want consistency. Repeatable, reliable process, yeah? Boom, there. That's what I want. So for the rest of you that might be carrying on the side, however you do that, I might have to swing my arm out of the way, pull it up like this, pull it up like this. However you do it, it needs to be reliable and repeatable. So find a touch point, right? And go to that point every single time. Also, as far as where you go pulling, right, where do I grab it? Right? Where do I grab it? For me, I have a rule in my head that I want to generally grab towards my belly button area. If I could curl around the bottom of the garment and pull it up, I will. But most of the time, I also practice in case I wasn't prepared, right? I just grab something, but I always grab around that touch point area, that belly button or belt line area, right? It's the same point every time up to my sternum. But belt to sternum, belt to sternum, belt to sternum. And you guys, you're built different. You carry, your configuration might be different, so you just got to figure out what your touch points is. All right, no big deal. Just try to make it the same thing every time, something reliable and repeatable. Same thing in reverse, right? When I go to put this gun away, always know the condition of your weapon. I treat it as if it's loaded, right? So I went through the process. Gun's safe right now. When I go to put it away, it's the same thing in reverse. I pull it up to that same touch point for the most part, right? I watch the muzzle into the holster, angling my hips so I don't take any unnecessary risk. Right? I'm mitigating risk the whole time because inherently, I mean, it's a tool that can be lethal, right? I just got to mitigate the risk. It's going to be dangerous all the time. The more shitty I am with my processes, for lack of a better way of putting it, the more dangerous it is. So we're going to have good systems and processes that makes it, that risk mitigated, right? It's a dangerous weapon. Can be, right? But I got to dominate it. Makes sense to everybody?
Yeah.
So, for a 4-step process, there's plenty of ways that you can break down the procedure of the draw. Some people do it one way, some other people do it another way, and I'm not saying one is wrong or one is right. I'm just saying we just need to communicate it effectively. So, the way I was taught was a 4-step process, right? A 4-step process, and however you can break that down in your head or change it later on, that's fine. But for now, to communicate it 4 steps, right? So it starts from clearing the garment out of the way, right? And for you guys that don't have to clear a garment, your hand still comes to that position, right? Whatever position that my support hand's gonna be at when it marries that grip or forms that 2-handed grip on my pistol, that's where I want it to be waiting. So instead of clearing your garment, for those that don't need to, your hand just goes to that spot and waits, right? I've been taught in the past, bring it up to the sternum. I don't really like that. I think it's a little less efficient, so you can bring it somewhere between the sternum and the belly button is a good place to have that hand waiting. Another good reason to have that hand waiting is to prevent anything bad from happening. I have a system that's got fail-safes built in. Fail-safes built into my system. So if I got under the gun, meaning I'm stressed out or on time or something scary is happening, and I try to draw that gun and I don't have a good system and my hand's kind of out here flopping around because I don't know what to do, could I muzzle myself?
Yes, sir.
Could I get excited and go to the trigger thinking I'm going to defend myself and then shoot my own self?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I'm going to program that out. I'm going to mitigate that by programming it out. So my hand's going to be here waiting. Plus, it's efficient because it's already where it needs to be anyway, so I can make that 2-handed grip that forms my good presentation grip. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, sir.
So fail safe and also efficient for my process. Right? So hand somewhere between sternum and belly button. And the same thing if you got to pull a garment, it ends up sternum, belly button, pull the garment, sternum, belly button area, and then I connect. Makes sense to everybody?
Yeah.
So this is what it looks like for me. And I'll try to back up so you can kind of see me so I don't have to point at anybody, right? So I can be here however I start. 2 hands are going to work at the same time always, whenever I can. Both hands working at the same time. That's why I got to program them, right? Here to the gun. All right, that is called step one of the process, right? So 2 things happen for 1 step. 1, right? Made my good grip. For you guys that are inside the waistband, there's different ways to go about this, right? If your gun's flat against your belly like mine is, I really don't like jamming my thumb in between my belly and my gun. For one, if you practice it a lot, it starts wearing your damn skin out. It hurts. I don't like it. I'm weak there. I'm sensitive, right? So I do like an eagle claw. I go over my rear sights just like this. Everybody can see my gun here?
Yes, sir.
Right, I just go to the eagle claw and that turns into a good high and tight grip once I pull the gun out, right? For some of you guys, you got room there, do it any way you want as long as you got a good consistent grip that's high and tight on the back of the gun every single time. Reliable, repeatable, right? Touch point there, that's my touch point, touch point, touch point. Make sense? So that's 1. 2 is simply when it clears the holster. Not any specific angle or anything, just clears the holster and starts orienting towards where I want to orient that barrel immediately. If it's on the side of your hip, 2. See how it's oriented already? Is my finger on the trigger?
No.
Right, because I'm not shooting yet, right? I made a decision, but the gun is not free and clear towards where I'm intending to shoot yet, right? That's 2, or 2, right? 3 is as soon as your hands come together, right? Now, the way your hands come together might be different. Some of y'all don't have to get too deep into the weeds. Like, is it grip like this when they come together? Is it like this when they come together to form that grip? We can work on that, and we'll talk about that as we run through this stuff, right? But when these hands touch, and my gun is generally pointed towards what I intend to point at, which would be the target, the threat, or whatever the case may be. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right, so there's my 3. 1, 2, 3, right? And then as I'm pressing out the 4, which is the final part of my process, meaning I intended to shoot, I already made that decision or I wouldn't even be pressing this out, right? Then I start picking up those sights, going to that trigger, prepping that slat, right? Seeing the sights that one final time and executing my shot. All right, once I shoot, we got our follow through process, so there's no hurry to pull this gun out and back it, right? I don't need to shoot and be like, ah, man, that was fast. And I know that seems kind of silly to me to say that, but I fall into the same pitfall when I practice because I get my mind in the drill mind state, and I'm trying to do a lot of repetitions, so I start programming myself to do the wrong things that don't make sense, that just make sense for me to do the drill repetitions, right? So I'm bang. Well, just keep it out there. Take a little breath, right? Brian say, hey, follow through, see what happened out there. That's my follow through. Did I hit? Did it work? Do I need to shoot anymore? Take a breath, get my mind-body connection going. Now we can bring that gun back, figure out the trigger safely, and then figure out what the hell else we need to do. All right, what's this guy doing? Why is his penis out? Or why is his gun pointed at me? Is somebody about to attack me like I'm the bad guy? Maybe I need to put this away, right? Makes sense. So again, watch me. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where I would be shooting, correct?
Yes.
So right here, I'm refining my sight picture, and there's my finger on the trigger, engaging, pulling that slack. So we'll get more into detail on all this stuff. We're going to give you the broad brush strokes right now, and we'll refine this stuff over the next couple of days, right? But being ready on that trigger. If you don't feel safe doing that, going to the trigger on the way out, we're fine. Eventually, I want you to get to the point where you're more efficient, though, and that finger goes to the trigger as the gun is pressing out, right? Because if the gun went off right now, it's relatively safe, especially for the training environment. The gun's still going to, or the bullet's still going to go generally where I wanted it to go, even if it don't hit exactly where I want. But it's necessary to figure out that efficiency so you're capable and confident with that gun. Make sense? But if you need to, in the meantime, you can press out and then go to the trigger there, right? No big deal. You don't have to jump on it as fast as you can, right? When you feel safe to do so, you do that. Make sense to everyone?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes.
Look what's happening when I put my gun away. Looks just like when I drew the gun, right? I'm just a little slower, a little more deliberate, paying attention to my giblets, as we call them in Tennessee. Or maybe I just made that up. Right? Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Always, for now, some of you guys as a professional, if you're a professional or you carry a gun for a living, right? Say like a police officer, there's a reason that they have to holster their gun without looking at the holster. Sometimes. Right? But they have a couple things working in their favor, which is their holster's offset. Right? It's a little easier to get into the holster. They're not worried about clothing being in the way, so that risk is not there necessarily. And they have to pay attention to what's going on in front of them because the situation can change in a split second, right? So maybe they got a holster. But what allows you to holster without looking when that gun is off the belt and outside the belt and free and clear is that you practiced however numerous times of putting it in there by looking at it, and your body recorded that, right? Same thing when we present our gun, we look at our sights, and eventually, if I didn't pick up the sights, the gun will go where it needs to go because my body was recording that information as I confirmed that it was in the right spot every time. So I'm going to confirm with my eyes every time I holster today, just to make sure I'm recording the right thing. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Remember this, whatever you do will become a habit if you do it enough. Your choice, is it going to be a bad habit or a good habit? And you can develop both of them pretty easy. Pretty easy. We all got bad habits. We probably need to break a little bit. Let's not have a bad habit involving these things in this process. Last time here. 1, 2, 3, 4. In reverse. All right, I'm done. Whew. Took a little breath. Figured out what the going on. All My fingers off the trigger. Everything in reverse. My hands are working together at the same time. I'm putting it away. Same thing if it's on your side. So make a promise to me right now. You're going to see that gun into the holster. Do you promise?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. That's going to help us be safe out here.
Hatpoint Target, our preferred mobile target stand. Super lightweight polymer. The designer of this product used to work in the automotive industry, so he knows what he's doing. The polymer is not only super light, but it's super durable, and if it does happen to get shot by an errant round, it won't crack. It just punches a clean hole. We've got good shooters. I actually don't have one that's been shot. He just told me. 3 different locations for different target widths. These are friction fit. And as I said, we've been demoing these for over a year. They work fantastic. So totally sturdy. 1x2 fits in there. If it's windy, breezy, you can either put a weight here, or they supply some long railroad type spikes, landscape spikes. You can just push them right through into the ground, pound them in, whatever you got to do. Works fantastic, super lightweight, and not going to rust, rot, or anything like that. Hatpoint Targets. Damn, cool.